Hello, welcome to this round of the Crazyhouse World Championship 2020. We have been waiting quite a while because this match was announced to begin at 8 a.m. GMT or UTC, but it is now 9 a.m. UTC on Saturday. Well, I'm hoping the match can go ahead for the full 10 games of 3+2. So xuanet versus mastertan. And this is game number 1. So we have a very unusual opening, it seems. How did the queen get drawn out to d5 so early? It was unprovoked, so he didn't have to play queen d5, but it's a rather odd position because the queen normally doesn't have the opportunity to go to h5 in the Scandinavian. So xuanet having a think, it seems like a very unique position. So I have been waiting patiently, as has mastertan. I've seen mastertan logged on for the last hour. So yeah, as I said, I'm hoping both players will be able to last the whole 10 games. I'm not sure whether it was a miscommunication or whether xuanet was just busy in the morning, European time. So he's played bishop b5. And gotta watch out for pawn at d5, so the main move would be e6, but bishop d7 is also an option. Okay, e6. d4. Doesn't seem to be any threats immediately to watch out for, so bishop b4 is quite decent, threatening queen takes b5. And I would assume xuanet's going to trade. No, he's offered a queen trade. So possibly planning pawn at d7 after the trade, or always got to watch out for a sack on f7. But on the positive for mastertan, trading does draw the king to d1 where he can't castle. Getting a challenge from another Aussie Mooner name. I wonder if he's watching. And then so how should black proceed from here? Yeah, I don't like throwing in a check because then pawn at g4. Queen is pretty close to trapped. Only has h4 where it's not doing very much. But all of a sudden there are some nasty threats on c6 and f7 and d7. So this queen drop, well, attacks d4 and also defends a couple of the key squares. Does seem like a pretty reasonable defense. I wonder if xuanet is the type of player that always looks to go on the offensive. Sometimes when it's not justified, but queen at f4 again defends and attacks. So what would I guess from here? Pawn at f6, but then after knight takes c6 and the trade of queens, black's not going to have enough defenders on the pawn on c6. So as well as f7, there is a sneaky threat to go knight takes c6 and then trade the queens off and take back with the bishop. So knight f6 defends one threat, but it looks like black is dropping some material. And it may end up being a whole stack of material, after, yeah, queen at f4, you mean, Moon? Yeah, after bishop takes c6, the rook drops. It also defends the g2 pawn in case of queen at g4 at the end. And there's probably queen at f3 in defense to hold everything together. Alright, so why not queen takes? What am I missing? Why not? Oh, is this just as good? Pawn at e5. So he's just intending to pick up the knight. I was was going to say maybe throw on in a check on g7 if available, but f6 is a massive hole. Plugged up with pawn at e7, knight at e5 coming, and this is too much. Yeah, Moon, haven't seen you in a while. What's been happening? Just queen takes rook, knight at f7 should be made in a few. Alright, very convincing performance from xuanet in the first game. Sefandria says shouldn't be up this early, but at least I get to catch the match. Well, I don't know whether you heard the beginning, but I've been waiting an hour for this match. And I got to watch a really wild, fun match between two Nigerian players, Kireka and Iron Man, which ended up in a 6-hole tie. And apparently it's best of 12, but they don't play any tie breaks. Alright, so what do we have here? I missed the opening, but it looks fairly standard. And I was just annotating a game between myself and variants only from last week, earlier today. And I pointed out the bishop doesn't really belong on c4 in these lines. It would much rather be on b5. Because now you'd already have a threat on c6, whereas bishop takes d5, okay, it works on move 4 if you can do it, but it doesn't really have a great effect if you do it now. So knight e5 does open up the threat of queen takes g4. So what does black have apart from knight takes e5? Well, knight d4, then queen g4 can be answered by knight takes c2, but that gets very sharp after, let's say, king f1, knight takes rook, queen takes g7. And possibly you can defend with rook at f8. I'm not sure whether there's anything after that. So he's gone for knight takes d4. It's certainly the most critical line. Yeah, I'm not sure after knight takes e5 what the best way to defend g4 was. Abhijit seems to be very impressed by Crazyhouse blindfold, but you should check out some of GSVC's games. Apparently he got a 2500 performance in his first ever elite tournament. It's one of the N gaming accounts. I can't remember all those guys. I think Katask has a blindfold account, but I can't remember who is who. Water and Gaming is one of them. And there's Mirinda and Gaming, maybe that's GSVC. Alright, what's just happened here? So there's no queen takes g4, knight d5, e d5, bishop b4, d takes c4. Pawn at, I was going to say pawn at d7 and then bishop takes, queen takes d4 was another option. Oh, what's this? There's a mate. Oh, very nice. Knight f6 and knight g7. So the queen is immune. Pawn at d2. It's an attempt to deflect one of the pieces. No, I don't think it's Pepsi in gaming. He's a unique player. That's somebody different. Pawn at d2, king d1. I was about to say king f1, but yeah, probably this is even better. So if there's a trick here, xuanet will find it because he's very good at finding force checking sequences. And I'm a bit slow calculating, as was seen in my match against GSVC this morning. Yeah, that's Raven. There's probably many people called Raven, but you mean Raven from Discord? Yeah, I don't think there's a good move here for xuanet. In Bughouse, you'd wait till you get down to 2 seconds and then set up some mate where you leave the queen hanging and then do a mate in 1. Yeah, so we should say, because John Lee posted on the forum, big congratulations to Jesugi99, who's officially ended all of his candidates matches and is the winner of the candidates with a clear first place, 85%. It's a massive margin over second place, who's still yet to be decided. Chicken's posted 66 games, something like that, out of 110. So that's about 60%. But still, the finisher and GSVC Bugzilla could possibly overtake Chicken for second place. I don't think it's theoretically possible for me anymore, even if I win 10-0. Because I only have 2 matches to go and I'm on 42 or 43 or something. 43 out of 90, I think. So Xuanet, how did he keep his queen alive? I don't even know how he kept his queen alive. I missed the moment, but suddenly amazingly, he's still in the game. I thought he was just absolutely gone. Can King Switcher? Oh yeah, King Switcher could get 80 out of 80, and then that would put him on, 82, but still behind Jasugi. Alright, there we go, Queen E8. Alright, so it was a force mate with the knight drops. Yeah, so of course he could potentially make second place. Statistically rather unlikely. Knight F3, I was actually preparing for GSVC playing some sort of B3 system this morning, because that's what he was doing against Jasugi, and I noticed Jasugi played this D5, Knight F6, G6, Bishop G7 system, Castle Kingside, and then all the games were quite long struggles, but Jasugi ended up winning most of them with the black pieces. And I was quite happy with the positions I was getting against GSVC. Just made some critical errors in time trouble. B3 works at Crazyhouse. I wouldn't say it works. It's a way to get out a book. Yeah, C4. I mean, I wouldn't say C4 is an ideal opening move in Crazyhouse. Of course, it's not losing. It's not losing or anything. I think Jasugi used to play E4 and then C4 as a way to get out a book against some players. How did Oppa do against Stockfish? He beat him in one game. He beat it in one game, playing 1 C4. But I think he might have lost 10 or so. Oh, lost a few. I'm not sure how many. Alright, so this queen on E6. Xuanet, of course, could always play knight G3, but it's not really his style. Is he going to sack on G7? And try to open this diagonal for the bishop. The mastertan's doing a good job of defending with the central pawn cluster. Actually, mastertan is thinking about not taking, but what are you going to do with the queen and the bishop? So I think he has to. It was slow time control, the upper match against the computer. It was 15 plus 0. He lost 33 games, says Abaji. So I wonder how much the computer was repeating, because one way to beat the computer is by brute force. You just practice the lines where you lose and find improvements, so and then you make your own theory. You know, you last 6 moves, 8 moves, 10 moves without blundering, and then eventually you can learn a line where the computer does something a bit dodgy. It's certainly far from perfect, the computer on level 8. You can always check out my bookmarks, where I have a string of wins playing with the black pieces. if you think the computer is perfect. So here we go, knight takes e5, bishop takes d1. I don't think there's any chance bishop f6 is going to work. Although, hang on. Bishop takes, queen takes, knight at h5. You can't step back where you normally would to h8 because of knight g6 check and bishop takes f6. So mastertan is probably have to go up to... He's going to have to go up to h6. But then there's knight hang on, was knight at h5 just winning? You can't step back because of knight g6. Or f takes. Yeah, bishop takes and queen at g7 mate. I think Xuanet's missed a kill shot here with knight at h5 check. Oh, hang on. What am I talking about? There's a bishop guarding h5. Well, let's pretend I didn't say that. There was a bishop on d1, wasn't there? Guarding h5. Yeah, well, that's what happens when you're half watching. Sometimes I actually play better blind than when I see... That's when I half see the board and half thinking about something else, then yeah, lose focus. Alright, but this is very strange. I don't understand what's going on. I'm blocking out the bishop, of course. I say of course now that I see it. So it's white that has to deal with the mate threat first. This certainly doesn't work this time, knight at h5. So what would be the most stubborn defense? Bishop c3 and king b2? Maybe? Yeah, but then there's queen at d1. Take pawn at e2. Should be easily winning for black. Yeah, that's it. Mate in one. So, could be that mastertan had it under control the whole time. After knight takes e5, bishop takes d1. Then... yeah, this g4 move wasn't working at all. I think I missed a move or two in between, but it seems like black was in control. Alright, scoreline is 2-1 in favour of mastertan. He's taken the first game with the black pieces. And what do we have here? Is this an exchange French? So I think knight e2 is a move in order to take back with the knight and not double the pawns. Because, okay, I mean, in Crazyhouse, having double pawns is not such a terrible tragedy. But it does mean you have to protect the loose pawn on c3. In most cases. There's some cases where you're counter-attacking, you can even let the pawn go, and sometimes you have a queen move in response, or sometimes you can even let the queen hang on d1. Yeah, I'm not sure about this bishop on b4. So you'd want to have a good response on a5 plan, because it's not so good to start thinking once you see a5 already on the board. But what can you do except d takes e4? And there is an option. I was going to say for Xuanet to even take back with the d-pawn. But there is knight at d5, so... Alright, probably take the bishop. And then e takes d5, the e-file is then open. Perhaps black could just ignore it and go bishop b takes c3. So threatening both b2 and d2. Alright, but he's sacked the bishop. I guess he's going to take back on e4 and then... d takes e4. You notice how the rook is covering both d5 and h5. And you can take that because the white queen is pinned. Hang on. Well, it's not pinned, but no, the pawn would still be on e4. The black pawn would still be on e4. I wonder if you could take it anyway and then do some fancy move to open the e-file. Anyway, it didn't happen. We have an intermediate move, bishop at a6. How about pawn at b5 and then sack the queen? You get a bishop and a rook and a check. But then after something blocks on c6, there's still a threat on e4 to deal with. There's probably nothing better though. So it's surely a forced play after bishop takes b5, queen takes, bishop takes. Well, safest move would be to put a new pawn on c6, but other ways to block may also be possible. I wouldn't go bishop d7, that loses the queen to rook at c8. I'm just looking at pawn 2 c6. Knight c6. So one potential drawback is that it may be hard to guard the bishop on c8 enough times if you put a rook on a8 and knight on a7 eventually, but then probably want to do something to stop the check on e4. Thank you. Who's that? Aracolongo? Aracolongo? Knight at e3. It's a rather unusual way to block. Thanks for watching PKR. You can always catch up later and put it on YouTube as well. Not sure whether he really wants to take on d5 anyway. I suppose queen takes can always be answered by rook at e3, so I guess black will go queen takes e4. And then, so this knight at e3 move is pre-guarding the two weak pawns on g2 and c2, so that way you can then attack the queen and then follow up with a quick counterattack, bishop takes d5 perhaps. It's a really interesting way to block the e-file, knight at e3, anticipating queen takes e4. And then take the queen. I was expecting knight takes, but no. Because knight takes does come with the threat of pawn at b2 and then queen at d2 check. I'm not sure whether it was a quick counterattack with something taking over the back row. Could always defend with bishop at d7. So neither side at the moment seems really close to a mate. I assume black is going to defend with bishop at f8. Because then white would like a pawn for e7. Even then you can just go bishop takes, knight takes, king d8. And then white probably wants to attack via, let's say, queen at b8. Or rook at b8. Yeah, but I think this is the most reliable defense. There's either bishop at d7 or queen at d8. Jasugi Oppa. Yeah, well, actually, I've been... I mean, we all know how good they are at 1+0, but I've been especially impressed by Jasugi's 3+2 performance because I was not expecting him to score 85% against such strong opponents. I was expecting, okay, maybe 75%, but that's just huge. Nobody did better than Chicken scoring 3-7. And then Bugzilla 2.5, then I think 3 or 4 players scored 2. Hang on, what is this bishop e7? Bishop e7 is normally always met by knight takes g7, but no, I'm confused. Well, this is just made after bishop at e7. So something funny happened there. Were there too many pieces attacking c8 and then xuanet put a bishop on the wrong color square? I mean, it really belonged on on b7, a6, d7, something on the same color as the bishop. And I was a bit surprised he put it on the other color, unless it was a slip, of course. So 3-1 in favor of mastertan. I'll come back to that question in a second about predictions for the final between Jasugi and Opaweze. We have a very old line, theoretical line, with a queen sack on d8. So knight f4 just outright loses to bishop takes f7 check. This does survive. There's many bishop moves. There's bishop at h5, bishop at f4, bishop at f6, knight at f6 even, maybe even something at g6 to survive. But yeah, this is a good move to hit the bishop. So prediction for the final. I noticed Oppa mentioning something in Discord, how he found Zhang Li's openings for the previous finals slightly predictable, and I think he's going to have a lot harder time predicting Jasugi's openings. So even if Oppa puts in a lot of preparation, I mean, obviously both players are very strong without any preparation at all. And I would say it was one factor in his victories over Zhang Li, but certainly not the only thing. But in terms of preparation, I think it's going to be very hard against Jasugi. In terms of their, what would you say, ability, natural talent, raw talent, then it's really very hard to predict a clear favorite. But it's hard to go against Jasugi with his current form. So out of 60 games, I would put in just a random early prediction of 68-30. Is that too much? 68? Hang on. 52? 68-52 in favor of Jasugi. Now, hang on. That's 120 games. Half that. Whatever half that is. 34-26. 34-26. There we go. That's just my random prediction. But because the majority of the games do go to the player with the white pieces, then I don't think you're going to see a blowout in the scoreline, like, more than 40 to either player. It'll be within 30 to 40 if there's a clear winner after 60 games. And I don't think we've had a tie in any of the CWC matches, in the finals, I mean. There's also been exhibition matches between Zhang Li, Oppa and Jasugi in a triangle. And none of them have been ties that I can remember. Okay, so queen takes f6 from xuanet, intending g takes and queen g4, which is pretty much always a good square for the queen, and obviously threatening on g7. So mastertan is thinking, is there any other move apart from g takes f6? I don't think sacking a bishop on either f2 or h2 really goes anywhere. So he's got to go for it. Oh, hang on, he's allowed queen takes g7. What is this? And again, xuanet would be very good if there is a force mate here of finding it. So anyway, let's try and work it out. I won't make the mistake of going knight at h5 in my calculations, but no. He hasn't even bothered looking too much into queen takes g7. So the king's path would be out this way to e6, and although white would still have a knight in hand, you would need knight at c5 to stop the king running back and being safe on d7. And even though there may be a pawn at d5, can you take twice? Take rook takes d5, and then there's still no checking sequence. And now the question is, does mastertan have any counterattacks? So I said before, bishop takes f2 doesn't work, but it's awfully close to working. I mean, there's always king h1. Bishop takes h2, also king h1. So this move is a defensive attempt to cover g7. There's always the option of knight at g6 to watch out for, but let's see. Knight at g6, h takes, knight takes. Oh, then there's not enough pieces left to sack, so that's not working. Xuanet has to defend against possible threats of knight at h3 and knight at f3. Now sack threatening queen at g1. So this comes with tempo. And that means perhaps not, bishop at h3 was better. I'm not sure. Knight at f3, king h1, g takes, bishop takes g4. Was that playable? Yes, so bishop at h3 was critical instead of bishop at f3. Alright, last ditch attempt to defend for Xuanet, knight at g1. Putting on the new queen to... What does this do? Does this... threatens knight takes f2, queen takes h2. So the queen on g4 was immune due to knight takes f2. So this blocks out the threat. But still, anyway, knight takes f2, queen takes h2, g3 is weak, and made in 2 to finish. Very well done, mastertan. So I couldn't be absolutely sure, but it seems like bishop at h3 was a better attempt to hold on for Xuanet, and he certainly trusted mastertan and his king run out to e6, and it seems like if he got to d7, then there were no checks after that. So yeah, fascinating position. Normally, when you have 3 knights surrounding the king, it's just an automatic mate. You don't have to think too much. But it's a very unique path for the king to reach safety on e6. So big scoreline already for mastertan, 4-1. And you see they've played about 750 games overall, these two. Have been on Lead Chess for quite a number of years. Old stalwarts, you could say. And yeah, you wouldn't expect there to be a huge difference based on the match history. But of course, current form is also can swing either way. So no castling for Xuanet. He's played rook g8, committed to sacking the queen. Of course, he needs to make sure this square is defended. You probably want to defend e7 a number of times. But no, he's gone for the counterattack, intending to meet queen at e5 with probably a new knight on e6. And it makes g2 very hard to defend because this g file is already open. So normally you could defend with a move like rook g1, but of course there is the option to just take it, maybe even rook takes, but then rook takes queen at g8 and x-ray along the g file. Rook g1, knight takes, rook takes, rook takes. Black has a rook in hand, so if knight at g7 you could sack the rook and then attack further. Yeah, so what is mastertan going to do? This doesn't help find a solution. It only tells what the problem is. Knight h4? Yep. Certainly better than any other suggestion I've offered so far. But yes, it was so many minor pieces. This was a good decision to go straight for the attack and not worry about a move like bishop at f8 or bishop at d6 like I was alluding to earlier. So if you have a pawn for e2, yeah, I mean, of course, you could put a bishop on e2. I'm just not so sure, because then it takes a long time to extract the knight out of the way to set up a mate. And Master 10 isn't too far away from setting up decisive threats with pawn at e7. So black will need to choose. Does he defend e7, or perhaps moving the bishop away, and then even pawn at e7 doesn't come with a direct threat, so you could afford to take the queen on d1 after pawn at e7. So I'm assuming Master 10, well, he could throw in a queen check if he wants, but it's likely to just put the queen in danger with threats of knight at d3 coming. So yeah, blocking is more sensible. If xuanet wants to go ultra aggressive, he could possibly go bishop takes f3. Although, again, it doesn't take Master 10 too many pieces to set up mating threats with less control, with the bishop not defending d7 anymore. And actually, you don't want to allow queen takes f3, so it might be better, preserve the bishop, or I was going to say an aggressive try might have been knight at d4, f takes, and then knight takes g2 ideas, knight takes and knight at f3 check. But I'm not sure, I haven't counted carefully whether that gives white too many pieces in hand. So queen at d4. If he wants to defend, it's very easy with bishop at d6. It might even be useful to put a new bishop on, because if he brings the bishop back, that lets the d-pawn open, and then there's bishop takes f4 for white. But with the bishop here, it does pin the d-pawn for the time being. Bishop at e2 instead. And you notice with this queen committed to coming back on the board, there's going to be less threats on the black king. So that is the reasoning behind xuanet's decision to attack. What would I do here? Queen at c4. I was about to suggest bishop d6. I was even looking at... No, that's too crazy. Would definitely like to distract the queen on f4. I'm just thinking of the best way to do it. Because when black has a pawn in hand, then the queen was defending the key square where there's a knight drop on d4. So as long as you keep that bishop... Oh, hang on, xuanet hasn't done this the right way. He's given too much material back, and he's forgotten that the bishop is needed to cover e7. Black resigns. It's a shame. I think he was dominating that whole game. Yeah, and I did mention a few times he needed to be careful with that square e7, and that's why I was suggesting to put a new bishop on d6. So perhaps that was a critical moment where he could have defended both the minor pieces after queen at d4. Right. So it's, what do we call this? A 3 knights defense? I've seen Zhang Li do an early knight d4 in a Ruy Lopez sort of position. Ladido is asking, who's the best Crazyhouse player? Well, at the moment, it seems to be either Katask or Zhang Li, or Jasugi, with Opoezen and Zhang Li. Well, I mean, if they're behind, it will be only by a very small margin. And those four seem to be at the top of the game at the moment. But in terms of the Crazyhouse World Championship, then it's between Jasugi and Oppowezen. So John Lee being the organizer this year, and also I should say that the tournament is coming to a close. We should all give John Lee a big thanks, a huge thanks to organizing, putting so much time into contacting the players, setting up all the conditions and the rules, and communicating that pretty much every week, keeping in contact with the players, making sure the matches have been running on time, putting up the guaranteed prize money of $2,000. So it's been an enormous effort from John Lee, obviously with many other responsibilities that he has this year. I've certainly enjoyed watching even the matches that I haven't been able to stream. So there's been other streamers. If John Lee can't do it, there's also Clearcast and OK. Duvid's commentated on a couple of matches. There have been a few times where I've been about to stream and then the match hasn't gone ahead as planned, as scheduled. And I'd say probably 90% at least have gone ahead as planned, as scheduled. But the Crazyhouse community, including the players and the spectators and the organizers, all do really appreciate it when the players can make a post on the forum if they can't make their scheduled time. Especially for the streamers. So I noticed Chuck is doing some commentating on the Bughouse World Championship, which is ongoing at the moment, and he mentioned something similar about the Bughouse schedule. Alright, what's happening in this game? This is game number 7 out of 10. Yes, threat of pawn at e6. Does seem a little bit difficult. Because even if you put a bishop here, you don't want to go bishop takes, because then we just replace a pawn on e6. So this defense seems to rely on king f8 in response to knight at g5, but it will lose the queen. You can't step to e7 due to queen e6 and mate on f7. King e8, then there'll be a disaster on f7. Hang on, what's going on? Xuanet hasn't gone knight e6 check. No, I'm very confused, but alright, I mean, there's overwhelming threats. Even if you defend e6 one time, there's 2 knights going to land on e6. So surely he's going to play knight at e6 this time. I mean, obviously these 2 players are not going to make the top 3, so there's plenty of opportunity to play for the crowd, play for the audience, do something totally mind-blowing, make some unexpected random moves, spectacular tactics. But okay, I mean, surely knight at e6 is the best move on the board. You may be able to take back with the rook, but this is just too much on the light squares. And now you're relying on knights to defend f7. Alright, come on Xuanet, play queen at g8 and pawn takes f7. No, he's not going to do it. I might have even considered that in a real match. Queen at g8 and e takes f7 check. Oh, I think it doesn't matter too much here. Xuanet's got him 5-2 to mastertan, 3 games to go. And do we see our first d4 in the match? Everybody's playing d4 against me, so I know what to expect next time around. Then everyone will start playing something new like c4. In Bughouse, I would always take the 2 pawns for the piece and go knight b5, bishop b5, but it sometimes doesn't work so well as planned in Crazyhouse due to the response knight at a7. And then you have to trade or back the bishop off, and it's not so good. Although, of course, the pawns can be useful in this sort of opening on h6 and g7. Whereas there are other lines which don't involve g6 and bishop g7. Now, of course, the knight hasn't committed to moving when I was looking at this. Knight takes b5, so h6 was still covered for the time being. But we have had a 0 trade game so far. Mastertan's going to have to do something about this attack on d4 because there's a lot of pieces. There are a lot of pieces pointing towards the d4 square. And if take, you see the knight covering h6, so you could just play knight takes d4 immediately. I don't think it's sacking the house on f7 is going to work. Yeah, so taking on h6 would be my first thought, just to remove the defender on f7, so then you can look at sacking, but no. Maybe he wants to sack next move after bishop f3, just so everything comes with check. Yeah, so Arokolongo is asking, am I in the competition this year? We can have a look at the current cross table and the standings after this match. But yes, in terms of the current score, I'm placed around 4th or 5th, but in terms of the percentage wins, and it counts on the total game score, so every single point counts, not just the match score. I'm only coming 6th, I think. So I think I'm more likely to come 6th. But it does depend on the match against the finisher, because I'm not expecting to get a big score against the finisher. But if I do fluke a few wins with the black pieces and manage to hold with white, then yeah, it could be close. But I'm not expecting anything higher than 6th place out of 12 in the candidates. So there's been, I think, a bit over 2/3, maybe close to 3/4 of the matches completed. King Switcher is a long way behind everybody else, has I think 8 matches to catch up on. But of course the winner Jisugi is already determined, so there's no need to delay if the Opoesin and Jisugi want to play the finals anytime and arrange 3 dates. Hopefully Australia-friendly times, so if Opera or Jisugi do end up watching. Anyway, I'm sure the message can be passed on if it's possible to arrange some Aussie-friendly times, not 3 in the morning. But we'll see. Does anyone know if Jisugi is on Pacific time? That's actually daylight saving. That's 19 hours behind Australian time. So if it's his evening, like say 9 p.m, that's already 2 in the morning my time the next day. Hello, Kola. Alright, what's just happened in the last few moves? Mastertan sacked his queen. I didn't even point it out. So the key defenders is bishop on f6 because Mastertan really wants to get in the move pawn at f7. Pawn at g7 rather. Now he spent his pawn on d3, but there is the possibility of knight f6, queen f6, bishop at g7 or bishop at g5, whatever, and knight at f6. So this doesn't come with a direct threat against the white king, and that means it's probably okay just to take and go bishop at g7. Oh, but no, he's gone for the rook. Oh, hang on. I was thinking mastertan's playing. I didn't even notice. This is a serious threat. Oh, it is a serious threat. I was about to say rook at d2, but then there's knight at c3, king f1. I wonder if rook at d2 is holding on better, because I thought that's why he picked up the rook on a8. Then I'm just a bit confused because I didn't realize how dangerous this queen takes c2 check is. But my first thought after seeing king f1 is it should be mating for black. But now I'm not so sure after king h2. What about knight at f1 check? No? I'm not predicting the moves at all. Yeah, surely knight at f1 check was good. But maybe this just as good, because the idea, I assume, is an eventual queen takes f3 check. And really not much choice, so is it absolutely crushing? Oh yeah, knight at g3. So you can't take with the f pawn because the other queen comes in, and otherwise rook at h1. Yeah, so nice move, knight at g3, opening up the second rank for xuanet. 5 games to 3, mastertan, 2 to go. Knight h3, looks like a penguin move, doesn't it? Doesn't he do that in 1-0 all the time? Knight h3, g3, bishop g2, castle. Alright, this is very creative. Rook g1. What is going on? So the main plan for xuanet seems to be just trade lots of times and try and poke a hole on g7. I'm not sure whether he's missed this move. Rook g2. You could take and go rook at g1 and pick up the queen. You'd assume white is going to block with the queen, rather than lose a bishop here. Now, what can you do with a pawn and a queen? Pawn at h2, there is rook at h1 in defense. So, what else? Yeah, this is a nice rejoinder of a move. Knight bd7. So it doesn't seem to be any serious threats. And white is going to need to leave the rook in case of pawn at h2 and queen at g1. So that means effectively white doesn't really have any pieces in hand to play with. You can trade a knight any time, of course, but the knight doesn't do so much damage to the way black is set up, with the pieces all defending each other. So knight df3 is a way to cover these threats of on h2 and g1. Now the rook can be used for something more meaningful. So just doing a quick count of the material. Black is a pawn ahead. Was that pawn he grabbed on h2, and otherwise they just traded a bunch of pieces. Knight at b5. So main threat seems to be taking rook at e7 and picking up the knight, or making the king walk into the discovered check. And the safest response would be pawn at f6. Is it necessary? What else could you do? Knight at f5, defending e7. Not sure whether I would castle. It's possible, but then knight takes, pawn takes. You got to be looking at bishop at h6, hacking away at the main weakness on g7. Pawn to f6, keeping the pawn. Alright, so again the bishop comes back to defend because it was an idea to take on f3 and then use this square on h2 to drop something new. Pawn at c7 I was going to say is the safest move. Because castling, yeah, there's no need to drop the pawn on d6 if you can defend. So Master 10 probably wants to castle kingside next. Also seems reasonably safe to castle queenside. If rook at a8 check, then you can just bring the knight back to b8. King g1 waiting move, or yeah, just making sure this square on h2 is covered multiple times. So Master 10 could trade here any time, but then as soon as he puts a knight, there'll be a new bishop on the board on h1 or g2. Yep, castling kingside seems pretty sensible. And already we see typical xuanet immediate attack in response. Rook at e7. How to defend everything. So dropping the pawn on e6. I was going to say you could delay perhaps with a move like knight at h5 or knight at g6. Maybe knight at g6 instead to hit the bishop and the rook. So if you had the choice to play knight at g6 before queen at d8, would you do it? No, I'd say yes. What's the go here? What's the deal? Is bishop at e7 really that dangerous? You just clean up a lot of pieces for the queen. I didn't understand this pawn at h5 move. Hello, okay. Thanks for streaming the match this morning. And I saw Legion in the chat as well. Oh, in the voice chat. Yeah, so picking up a lot of pieces for the queen. I didn't like this pawn at h5 move. But I didn't pay too much attention. Maybe the rook was trapped. Could he have just put a new bishop on g3 or something instead of pawn on h5? So queen b4. And surely these minor pieces are just going to overrun the king side eventually. Ah, he's oppa in disguise. This can't go wrong. Too many minor pieces for Master 10. You could even play a move like rook at b6, or you could do anything. You do whatever you want. Play on the queen side, play on the king side, defend the king, go for material, whatever your cup of tea is. Just pick up the rook on a1, rook at g1 check. No, this is even better. Yeah, alright. Next game, I think. I don't think Master 10's going to have 10 seconds of Aussie lag to lose on time. So there will only be one game left after this. Is there a cute smothered mate somewhere we can find? I would have probably just gone rook d e8 and taken over the e-file. Yeah, uh-oh. Bishop at d2 check, pawn at d2 check. Alright, there's no use. Kleiner B, rook at b6, inferior over. I was just trying to hit the queen and then dump more pieces like a bishop on b4 when the queen goes back. Okay, last game. You've got everybody joining on the last game. So, I don't know whether you saw the opening in, was it game 9 where xuanet played knight h3 on move 1? He's done the same in game 10, knight h6. Perhaps, dare I say, a little bit less reliable than knight h3. And Master 10's taken the same approach. Just hack the knight away. Ooh, queen h5. You defend with d6. Gotta watch out for some bishop b5 check. Maybe it's okay. And there's also a bishop at g7, but then maybe he wants to push f4. Where does the knight go after f4? Knight g6. There's a threat on b2 in that case. Perhaps safer just to go knight c3, develop normally. Knight c3, bishop e2, and then f4. Alright, but watch out for something landing on g4. So perhaps this isn't so bad for black. Because, yeah, f4 does come at a cost. I'm not sure whether it's really worthwhile, white playing f4. Knight d2, wasn't expecting this one. Is he trying to avoid something by playing knight d2? Is he trying to avoid a pin? Or? Because obviously knight c3 is a standard move. And if the bishop does commit to b4, then still looking at opportunities to play bishop b5 check. We're going to see a repetition. Queen takes, knight takes, bishop at a4, bishop at d7, bishop fb5. Take, take, bishop at d7, bishop at a4. Any improvements after the queen sack on g4? Oh, we still could see something similar, yeah, queen takes g4. But then there's the added option of bishop takes b5. Oppa suggesting perhaps bishop at f5 after takes on d7. So white still has... Yeah, I'm not sure whether this bishop's still on the board or whether it's already moved. Anyway, so bishop b5, bishop at d7. mastertan still thinking. What is the alternative? It's not looking so good. I think queen takes g4 was a big improvement on this move order. Because now I just go bishop takes b5 if I was xuanet. No? What are we missing? Am I missing something really obvious? I usually do. Okay, bishop at f5. Take, take, queen at e5. Just looking at queen takes b2. Or do you put a bishop on and so you can go queen at b5 check and then do everything with check, swap queens? It seems like bishop at e2 is the best defense I can find. Knight e2? What's the idea after queen takes b2? He just wants to castle. Bishop at b5? Yeah, I like this move, bishop at b5, because then after the trade, I'm not sure whether you can really use this hole on c2 though. If you had more pieces you would sack, but the king is getting away. So what is there? I guess you could still play bishop at b5 for defense anyway. Because this diagonal is a bit of a worry, this a4, e8 diagonal. Jasugi saying chicken. Who's he talking to? Who's the chicken? Not sacking a queen? Bishop at a4 check, king f8. Oh, hang on, has he just missed knight at d7 check? Or was that deliberate? I'm not sure. Big weakness on d3. And you don't really want to cover it with a queen because there's so many minor pieces to harass the queen. Does black have anything? You'd want to do something with tempo. Well, knight e4, then there's a bit of a hole on f3. So white really wants to do something on the light squares, f7. In terms of counterattack, that's why he's trying to get rid of the knight on e5. Yeah, black still needs a few more moves to... He mouse slip castle says okay. I'm not sure about that. Queen at g4. So many ways to block. There'll be eventual knight at f6. Okay, so in the long term, mastertan still really wants to attack on f7, but he needs another diagonal piece. That's why he's going for a bishop. Yeah, queen at g4 is a good defense because there is another queen in hand. Easy to forget that white had two queens. So now, no, I was expecting knight takes bishop. Oh, he's just picked up the bishop on e4, I see. Now getting the queen far out of the way. Any sack can just be sidestepped. Perhaps it's not enough anyway. So xuanet running out of pieces because if he had another pawn, another knight, he could do something here, but I don't think it's enough. Could probably just take that. So now it's a light square defense for mastertan. The bishop on f3 is very useful. He's got enough defenders against any sack on h2. Looks good. Yeah, looks a great defense for mastertan. But still the material is evening up. Mastertan still one piece ahead. Anything can happen here. It's still in the balance. Queen h3, bishop at g2, I guess. Yeah, anything. Bishop at g2 in defense. Alright, the bishop on a4 is still hanging. Was it necessary to drop the bishop? Was there any other threat? Oh, d2 as well. Wow, that's going too fast. So g7, uh-oh, knight at h5. Pawn. No, he's going to flag. It's a sad way to finish. So how might the game have ended? Pawn at g7. Pawn at g7, knight takes e7, king f8. Probably just bring the knight back to f5. And no more pawns for e7, you have to defend with a knight. Yeah, knights are not the best defensive pieces in this case. It looks like mastertan was winning on the board anyway. So final score is 7 games to 3 in favour of mastertan. Shall we check out the standings and the cross table? So here we go. Crazyhouse World Championship candidates. It's a 12-player round robin, and you can see we're slowly getting there. Some players have completed a lot more matches than others. I was expecting to see Bugzilla Penguin this morning, just before my match against GSVC, but that was postponed for the second time. So there are only 2 players who have completed all their matches, Jasugi99 and Chicken Crossroad, and you can see their scores there, a 93.5, which is 85%. So again, congratulations Jasugi99, winner of the Candidates 2020, and he will take on Opperweisen in a 60-game final of 3+2 Crazyhouse to be played sometime in the next 3, 4, 5 weeks. So I was saying before, not sure whether Oppo was here, but if the match can be played if it's possible to play at an Aussie-friendly time, that would be great. But of course, it's whatever the players can do, because they're all on different time zones. Australia is GMT plus 11. Opera, I assume, would be +1, GMT +1, and Jasugi would be, if Pacific time is right, he would be GMT -8. Is that right? Yeah, -8. So, yeah, I'm not sure whether it's going to be so easy to arrange, but anyway, you can do your best. If it's a weekend, pretty much any time except 2 or 3 or 4 a.m. is okay. I'd still stream. If it's a weekday, of course, might be harder. But yeah, evening in Europe, if it's at 6 or 7 in the morning, it's still doable if it's not on Monday to Friday. But or Friday night's okay, Saturday night's okay, because then that's Saturday, Sunday Australian time. And that would be ideal. But yeah, if it's Sunday night European time, that would be Monday. We'd both be at work, myself and John Lee. And sometimes John Lee can get up. It's a bit easier for him because I have to be somewhere at 7 in the morning, but he can sometimes do it on a weekday in the morning. So it's still a battle for second place. Chicken has posted a final score of 66. And who can catch him? Bugzilla still has 2 matches to play. It's quite likely that he could get 14 points against Penguin and King Switcher. So it's certainly viable that Bugzilla could overtake Chicken for second place. GSVC has 3 matches to play, and he would need to score 19.5. Thank you, Siddhant X. And he has to play King Switcher, Finisher, and Variance only. So what are we here? And he would need an average of 6.5 or something. So although his favourite score is 6 games to 4, it's certainly possible that he could fight for second place as well. And the Finisher has still 5 matches to play. One of them is versus Mugwort. And who else does the Finisher have to play? Art of Deception, GSVC, King Switcher, and Variance only. So I guess the Finisher is the biggest unknown because it doesn't look like he's on a high score at the moment, but he could easily finish on between 65, 70, something like that. And Variance only, of course, the sky's the limit. Well, the 70 is the limit. Does he have any really tough opponents? GSVC and the Finisher. Yeah, and I can't see anybody else fighting for the top 5 places or so. So there we have it. The prize money is listed. Yeah, shall we go back to the forum? Because John Lee has generously put up partly community-sponsored guaranteed prize money of $2,000. I'm not sure. I haven't seen him much streaming in the last month, but I'm not sure how that campaign is going to raise some funds. But let's check it out on page 1 of the Crazyhouse Candidates forum. Where's page 1? Here we go. So yeah, the prize money you can see here. The candidates' names you can see up the top. So first candidate, Jasugi, will play Oppoweisen for the World Champion 2020. Champion prize is $400, it's US, and a runner-up is $200. And second candidate, which is still unknown, $150, and then even the lowest candidate is $100, but the condition is that you have to play all your matches to collect your prize money. So some people have to get a bit of a move on with the matches, and hopefully they can all be completed in the next few weeks or so. I have 2 to go, just waiting for the Finisher and King Switcher to respond, and yeah, hopefully we can get those completed so we can have a final cross table. But of course, in terms of the overall winner, that is already decided. So the next match coming up, what is the next match coming up? So So whoever's organizing the calendar has put different colors. Is dark green and light green are for the Crazyhouse World Championship, which is going on at the moment. And there's a Crazyhouse match in a couple of hours. That's in Sydney time, which is UTC plus 11. Would like to wake up early on a Sunday for one of these Elite Crazyhouse so I can stream. Yeah, I'm not very good at 3+0, especially no increment streaming, but maybe donate some points now that the CWC is coming to a conclusion. Donate some free rating points by streaming the Elite. Anyway, it's always a matter of if I'm feeling like a total zombie in the morning when I wake up at 5:30. If I'm presentable to the world of Crazyhouse. Anyway, we'll see what happens. But I saw it was a pretty good field in the 1+2 last week. I think Blitzbullet and Zixon joined. Maybe Bughouse Knight as well. So we have, no other Crazyhouse matches guaranteed. Bugzilla Penguin, looking forward to that, but that's postponed again. So I think I will leave it for here, and I'm sure John will send out whatever reminders are necessary. He's already notified everybody on the forum who has an outstanding match. And looking forward to seeing some dates organized for the final between Opoeisen and Jasugi. So that's it for now. I will bid you good evening or morning, and see you next time. Thanks for watching.